Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Bronsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
Oh my god, Steven Zuber! You sound so different!
Just kidding, Steven's in Cancun with his wife.
Aww. So
it's just us.
Okay. But for people who are first-time listeners and may not know who you actually are, did you already say you're Just Dicky?
Oh, I didn't.
This is Just Dicky.
I'm Just Dicky.
Yay, welcome.
I think I am anyway.
Oh, that's true. You don't remember your birth. Someone could have just been telling you you're Just Dicky this whole time.
Yeah, everyone can be in on the conspiracy.
Right? That's what the Bayesian Conspiracy is actually named after.
Oh no. It's you guys.
Yep.
This is silly. So, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about this article at Palladium Magazine written by... Oh, crap. I forgot to get the name.
Natalia Deshawn.
Natalia Deshawn. Excellent. It is an article that at the Less Strong meetup I was talking with friend of the show, Matt Freeman, who also has his own podcast, which we'll plug right now. It is We've Got Ward and the Doofcast.
Yeah, the Doof Media.
Doof Media.
So if you go to doofmedia.com, you can find all the stuff he works on, and his other co-hosts. They have some great podcasts. Highly recommended.
Yeah. But we were just talking about, elites in America, and he recommended this article, said it's really cool. I said, okay, I'll read it. And then I read it, and I was like, this is really cool. We should do an episode about it. So now that is what we are doing. And the name of the article is The Real Problem at Yale is Not Free Speech.
It's by Natalia Deshawn on palladiummag.com.
Yes. And I believe, according to Matt, Natalia Deshawn was, back in the day, Nyan Cat over at Less Wrong.
Oh.
Yeah. So, old-time contributor. Before we got into that, though, I wanted to quickly mention this idea that I recently ran across, which helped put things a little bit into perspective. Not into perspective. It gave me some background to go on, and
okay.
I'm just sharing this background now. So I read Context Machine's Tumblr now and then, and Context Machine had this awesome post on Bruce Wayne Republicans.
Okay, wait, who's Context Machine? Context Machine?
Yeah, spelled with a K.
I mean, what do they post about? What's their thing?
Oh, their thing is basically posting about 90s culture.
Okay.
Yeah, and since, I also grew up in the 90s, I'm like, oh yeah, this is fun. So I enjoy reading that. And occasionally, making interesting, snarky parallels to the modern day. I'm like, cool, this is right up my alley.
Sounds neat. You should link to it.
Okay, I will do that. And people who didn't live in that era, weren't growing up around that time, probably won't be as interested, but maybe they will be.
I think a lot of us in this community probably grew up in the 90s too.
That's true. And also he has a thing for Taylor Swift. Is that the big singer?
That's a big singer.
Okay, well, then I got the name right. Like red lipstick, blonde hair.
That describes like many pop stars.
That's a good point. I'm sorry. But yeah, also a fair bit of Taylor Swift stuff. But anyways, had this post about Bruce Wayne Republicans where he was saying that most people nowadays, and this included me, think of Republicans as basically kind of evil, environment-destroying, rich people who are racist and want to keep down the poors. And he said that there used to be a concept of Republicans, which of specifically upper-class Republicans, which a lot of Republicans still probably hold to, being the Bruce Wayne Republican is what he termed it.
Okay, what does that mean?
Bruce Wayne is the alter ego of Batman, as you probably know.
Yes.
Okay, and Bruce Wayne is also very rich. But Bruce Wayne and his parents Bruce Wayne less so since he uses his money to punch people. But his parents, specifically, used their money to help make Gotham better. They felt they had a responsibility, and they were, keeping up a civilized demeanor and always had proper manners, and they would spend money on helping to uplift the city and fund programs for the poor and those sorts of things. They were, yes, specifically elite and rich, and they did, I don't want to use the term exploit the labor of the poor because they were trading money for labor.
From it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They were the what a lot of people think of as evil capitalists, except without the evil part so much. They were
like billionaire philanthropists.
Yeah, and he said that's basically how a lot of people who vote for Republicans and who are anti-tax tax hikes and that sort of thing view them that way. That they're not these evil people like in the Marxist class conflict taking advantage of the proletariat. They are trying to carry society forward in ways that they have the ability to and other people don't. So anyways, that was basically it. It was a short little thing, but it helped me think of those sorts of people as not evil, which is always a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, and, I know a lot of Republicans that I like, and I don't agree with a lot of stuff that the Republican Party likes, but I don't hate all of it, and also, the whole two-party system, I think, is kind of screwed up for both sides. Mm-hmm. I do feel a little weird about the Bruce Wayne Republican idea, because it's like, have you met rich people?
I have not met rich people.
You haven't? Okay.
And not that rich, no.
I've met a few different kinds of rich people, and there are billionaire philanthropists, and I think that they are in the minority, or except to the extent that they're donating to receive tax cuts or tax kickbacks, or to promote whatever their company is, make it look better.
And yeah, I have no idea if they're the minority or majority or what.
Yeah, I don't actually know. My impression is that they're the minority, but I don't have numbers on that. That would be interesting to look into. Yeah. And I do have a lot of respect, though, for the ones who are doing good stuff.
Yeah.
I think there was this Slate Star Codex post that was against billionaire philanthropy or something like that, and I agreed with a lot of the points from that, too.
I guess I needed that sort of background because I came from a very much class warfare kind of background where I viewed all rich as evil and the enemy. And it was just nice to have other perspective, because this post that we're going to be talking about is specifically about the elite and the rich and why they are important and why things are a problem right now. And I mean, things are always a problem in society somewhere. There's never a time where we don't have problems, but why there is this particular problem that this article is talking about.
Yep.
Cool. The article starts out saying that the campus free speech debate is just a side effect of the real problem, as are the debates about diversity and inclusion, and that the real problem is a lot deeper than this so-called free speech debate that we're having. And I don't know if we need to touch on that. Probably everyone's already aware of the culture wars and the free speech debates.
And... I'm gonna assume that everybody is pretty familiar with the culture wars. I guess the TLDR version, if anyone isn't, it's the pro-diversity, anti-sexism, social justice side of things versus people that are traditionalist or against these things for various reasons.
Yeah, and the various ways these battles are happening on college campuses and throughout society.
Yeah, I kind of want to bring up the story that opens the article, because I think this summarizes kind of the next point that you were about to make about what's this article about, what's this problem.
Sure, do it.
So this starts out with a personal story. Natalia starts the story about Marcus, a fellow Yale student who dressed and behaved like a poor writer. And one day she sees that he looks starved and he's sitting there chain smoking cigarettes, and she offers to buy him a sandwich. And he says, "You know I'm rich, right?" It turns out he's super duper rich. He only acts poor because he likes the aesthetic.
Yeah, she pointed out that she was about to buy a sandwich with what little money she had left for this guy who could buy and sell her entire family multiple times over.
Yeah.
With his trust fund, not even with the rest of his family's money.
It was his trust fund.
Yeah.
And she says that in terms of Yale, I was in the bottom 2%.
Yeah. That approximately 2% of students hail from the lowest income quintile, while 69% come from the top 20%. And she also mentions that basically all of those bottom quintile students are moved to the top quintile after graduating Yale. That going to Yale is the fastest way to join the upper class.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
She didn't really go into why more people don't do it, did she?
Why what?
Why more people don't do it.
Don't go to Yale?
Yeah, I mean...
Yale only has a few slots.
I guess that's it.
Yeah, and they got to take most of them from the elite rich classes. She did point out that Yale costs $50,000 a year, but if your family makes under $60,000 a year and you're one of the, very gifted and very lucky people to get in, it's free. Or basically free. So it's actually cheaper than community college if you're poor and you can get in.
And if you can get in, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she says the big universities, like Yale, can't stay out of the culture wars news. Left versus right, political correctness versus free speech, empathy and inclusion versus economic realities. Students for fighting social and racial justice against morally bankrupt faculty and administrators. But, she says, after attending Yale for some of the larger scandals in recent years. These dichotomies ring hollow.
Okay. And yeah, this is her explanation of why the rest of this podcast and the rest of this article. She did mention when you were talking about the rich people pretending to be poor, that basically everyone on campus was like that.
Yeah.
To the point that it was, she wouldn't have known any of them were rich, aside from the fact that there's some tells that, pretending to be poor is not 100% accuracy thing.
Yeah, well, she says while she was attending Yale that she realized that the others that were in the bottom 2% would complain really vocally about how broke they were all the time. Want to go out for brunch? Oh, I can't, I'm so broke. Wow, you took a taxi to the airport? I always have to take the subway because I'm so broke.
Yeah.
And she says real poor people don't talk that way.
Yeah.
She found out that they're not real poor people. These are members of the upper middle and upper classes who, compared to the real hyper-rich people, maybe do seem poor, but they're not poor by anyone's standards, besides that. And
then the question was, why? The first question was, why are they pretending to be so poor?
Yeah, actually, could I get into the signaling thing that she said about after that?
Yes.
She says pretending to be poor is a lot easier than pretending to be rich, but there's still some small quirks that you have to get right. Social class doesn't just influence how you walk and talk, it influences how you interact with others. The stereotype is that poor people are improper, but sometimes it's the opposite. They try to do things as they think they're meant to be done. Spending 100 hours building bat wings for a Halloween costume. Renting a limo for their child's prom. But lying about anything's tricky, you risk being found out, so what are these people trying to accomplish by acting broke?
Yeah.
And this raises the broader question of why pretend to be part of a social class that you're not.
So she points out that the Saudi billionaires want to avoid being kidnapped, so they keep a low profile. And then the regular rich probably are following the common impulse of trying to emulate people that are in a class above them. But, like you said, they don't actually know how the real poor live. She said once she was shamed in front of a crowd for not donating to a society, even when she donated a different gift just a day ago, and when she confided to a friend, he was like, "So you're upper middle class?" And no, not at all. But the fact was that no one at Yale really had any sort of context of poor people.
Yeah.
They hadn't met them. They didn't know how they acted. They had at best these kind of caricature stereotypes that they were trying to enact.
Yeah, they never met them. There was this other instance where her class was comparing the costs and benefits of being on food stamps, and Natalia commented on her own experience with the program, and her professor was shocked and said, "You don't really mean you're on welfare. You just were supported by your parents, right?"
Right.
Like, you couldn't actually believe that he met someone in real life who had really been on welfare.
Yeah.
Which just shows how insulated they are.
Yeah. The thesis of the article seems to be, which is where this is going now, that these are the people with power who fail to comprehend the meaning of that power. That they're abdicating their responsibility, the responsibility to be like the Bruce Wayne Republicans I talked about before, and they don't even know it.
Yeah. At first it seems like distorting your wealth signals is just this funny signaling game that upper class people do and that shouldn't really have any effect on anybody else. But Natalia says if you put on an act long enough, you end up forgetting that it's an act.
Yeah.
The just kind of super rich forget that they have power and privileges that others don't.
Yeah.
And Natalia actually claims that this started happening before Yale, and talked about an incident from her high school where she thought that this rich friend of hers was being bullied for being too rich because these kids were making fun of his high-class accent, and turns out the kids doing the bullying were even richer than the kid that they were bullying, and they were actually making fun of his undisguised tells of class. Like, oh, you're not faking being poor well enough.
She says that when these kids grow up, they end up at conferences where everyone lifts champagne glasses to speech about how we need to tear down the man and usurp conventional power structures, apparently not realizing that they are the man and the conventional power structures.
Yeah.
So she says this is a problem because we forget the extent of our own power and start blaming an ephemeral elite beyond ourselves for the ills of society. And when something does need to be changed in elite thought, we bail. We forget our own position of strength and assume we cannot bear those risks. We give up the fight before it even starts, as if someone else can or will fight it.
Yeah, she brings up this thought experiment about what it would be like being the biggest, strongest person in a hunter-gatherer tribe, and therefore needing more food than anybody else. So what happens when you have this power but you don't take responsibility? You'd be in trouble. Resentment would grow. Why do you get to eat so much of our hard-won food? What makes you so special? So if that person took on a leadership role, they could use their strength to protect the tribe and then earn their extra share of food. But would you want to be the strongest in the village right at the moment when you failed to use that strength properly and the village is dying and the rivals are out for blood? Yeah. Or would you rather be the average person just eating the normal amount of food without being hated?
Yep. She says the rich and powerful are expected to take responsibility for things and blamed when they go wrong. And she says that the check your privilege is a line which just about everyone has heard. What it means is kind of evasive, but there's some point to it. The rich have privileges. And with great privileges come great responsibilities, to quote another superhero. So they therefore have responsibilities, and the responsibilities are not always so fun.
So they say that the recent scandals at Yale had to do with race and social justice. But Natalia thinks there's something else going on, that members of the ruling class aren't sure what to do with themselves. They're not even sure they want to rule.
Yeah. They're expected to use their power to, help society and rule benevolently. Because, she says the reason they're expected is that if they don't, no one else can or will. The middle and poor classes don't have the powers and privileges they do, and can't afford the necessary personal risks. But the elite are not stepping up anymore.
Yeah, and Yale in particular is different from other Ivy League schools. It has this history that's rooted in public service.
Yeah.
It started in 1701 when a few ministers were disappointed by Harvard and left to start a more pure, more good, more proper university. The reason that Harvard's motto is Veritas, whereas Yale's is Lux et Veritas, light and truth. Truth without light is pointless. Knowledge without an aim is at best not useful, and at worst destructive. So they have this kind of high standard that they claim to stand for. But it's happening, this thing is happening at all the big elite universities. And
I didn't realize before I read this article just how influential Yale is. I knew it was a big college, but so big college, rich people go there and get good jobs, right? That is, in my middle class upbringing, that is what I associated colleges with. Colleges are where you go to learn how to get a good job.
Yeah.
And apparently not so much once you're in the very high levels. Colleges are where you go to learn how to use your power and be a good elite person. And Yale was like the top of these. The list of presidents that came from Yale and the list of people who went on to be on the Supreme Court or in other positions of high power it was astounding. I was like, holy crap. And she points out that people who graduate Yale go on to write the American Psychiatry Association book, whatever that's called.
Oh, the
DSMV? No.
Yeah.
Diagnostic for whatever it is. But they write that, which decides which conditions are covered by insurance, right? Which is a huge amount of power. They go on to become presidents of the National Art Society and decide what artists get funding, which is also a huge amount of cultural power. Most people who graduate from Yale go on to really make a difference in society through that one point of their job going forward. So I guess Yale is a bigger deal than I thought it was.
Yeah, I had always had this impression that the elite colleges, kind of the reason that you go there is to network with other elites.
Yeah.
At least I know a lot of people say that about business schools. Like, you don't really learn there to learn how to run a business. You go there to meet your future business partners and your competitors. And I guess also it makes sense that you would go there to be among your peers and kind of learn the social norms for being rich, which apparently are pretend you're not.
Backtracking just a little bit about the elite's responsibility to keep society running, she does point out that societies exist in a pretty fragile balance. The Rwandan genocide only ended in 1995. Syria was a flourishing nation just 1 decade ago and is now in total war. And Venezuela was stable just 6 years ago. And now, has the average wage is not enough to buy enough calories to live. People are emigrating en masse to surrounding countries because the whole place is just falling apart. So, yeah, it's kind of important not to fuck your entire society over. The elites, at least the current generation that's coming up, and I would say more than just that, this is starting to spread everywhere, are just kind of abdicating that responsibility. They aren't doing their thing. Natalie says, was it Natalie?
Natalia.
Natalia says that something is wrong in elite circles, preventing clear examination and correction of ideological errors. And this creates an atmosphere of impotence and guilt that contributes to rich young people pretending to be broke to escape that responsibility.
Yeah, why this is dangerous. This is kind of, she said, replacing the old type of class signaling, which had to do with what designer handbag you wore, what accent you had, what prep school you went to, and now they've got this new class signaling where they find any reverse privilege points they can. If they're cis white men, they pose as allies. On an institutional level, the old ways of legitimizing powers are gone, and the new motto is this: diversity is legitimacy.
Can I mention the cool anecdote about the position of master at Yale?
Oh yeah, no, that's important.
Yeah, which feeds into this. It was really an interesting position, which appears to be unique to Yale. At the very least, Harvard and other colleges don't have it. The role of a master of the school. There's apparently like a dozen different schools within Yale, or colleges or whatever, that are their own self-contained. They got their own gyms and libraries and dormitories and all that, and each one has a master. And the master is kind of like, I don't even know what you would call the master.
Well, they renamed it to head of college, and it sounds like the person that you talk to when you're have concerns about the way the college is run, or...
Yeah, but not just that. Like, the master always has a tea time that they put on. They welcome all the new students to the school. They teach them. They show them the ropes. They're like, I almost say like the live-in butler, house master. Like,
I just looked it up. It says the master is the person who memorizes students' names, meets with the parents, and is a welcoming presence.
Memorizes all the students' names every year. I can't even memorize the names of my friends.
I'd love to learn what their mnemonic techniques are.
Yeah.
There's 12 of them. There's one for each of the residential college. The dean of each of the residential colleges handles administrative and academic concerns. The master's involved in all cultural matters.
Yeah.
So they throw the master's teas, where they curate and welcome special guests. And the etymology stems from the word magister.
Yeah, so they're this awesome position that is like perpetuating the culture and making everyone feel welcome, which honestly sounds like an awesome job. I would love to just make people feel welcome and happy and do things to make their lives better, right? Which I guess you can only get in a really rich society that has the resources to spare for that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, apparently it's unique, because Natalia says that that's one of the reasons she chose Yale over Harvard and Princeton. At Harvard, this sense of culture was non-existent. A welcoming party with the president? Wine? Forget about it. We picked up our welcome packet and we're sent on our way.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is a cool position, and there was apparently one of the culture war battles broke out over the term master, because that is also the term that slaves had to call their owners in the American South.
Yeah, specifically African American slaves in in the South.
Yeah, and so instead of, I mean, I guess the administration pushed back for a couple months and then completely folded, and now it's called head of college, or head of school.
Head of college.
Now it's called head of college instead of master, and I guess they still do the same thing, but why? What was the point? You've just destroyed a unique, interesting piece of culture, a small part of it, like the title, but the title itself has culture to it, right? It's
yeah, Yale's been around for a while, and
it's a neat piece of flair. And
there was like something that the author said, that maybe it would have been better to have educated the students about their academic heritage, and the administration could have explained that the term has nothing to do with slavery in America and actually derives from a rich history that makes Yale unique. But apparently they just caved in immediately.
Yeah.
After a little bit of debate, the title was very quickly changed.
And she says that they didn't take any polls of the student body either, right? There was no authoritative process. They just said no and then caved after a bit. And they could have pushed back, but instead they folded to demands of a small number of students willing to make noise.
They also had this Halloween costumes incident.
Yeah, which...
That also made national headlines, because of course it did.
I guess I didn't hear of it, because I guess I try to avoid these sorts of things. But I guess there's
so many of these things happening all the time. It's hard to keep up with who's offended by what. But
someone I guess was like offended. No, not
it
even
wasn't
offended.
Even anybody offended. It was the Intercultural Affairs Council wrote an authoritative email to the entire student body right before Halloween, telling students to be mindful about offensive costumes. So a few students approached Erica Christakis, a professor, child psychologist, and the wife of Yale master Nicholas Christakis, and told her, it's kind of weird that the council can just email the entire student body and tell it what to do. So Erica wrote her own email proposing Halloween costumes should be policed not from the top down, but from the bottom up, with students having conversations with each other. And, of course, the entire internet attacked Erica and her family.
And they both resigned, right? Or both
they
were
were calling
fired?
for them to be fired. I'm not sure if they were.
It was apparently...
They stopped teaching. Both her and her husband stopped teaching.
Yeah, right? And he really kind of fucked up. On the national scale, I guess, it did make some headlines. But overall, a pretty small news story, went away after a few days. Like I said, I missed it entirely. But Natalia says that it changed the entire dynamic on campus. That for the entire year, the issue was debated in dining halls, it split apart friends, and it formed a mist over everything else for the entire year. She then asks, why? What was the point of all this happening, right? And in short, the point was that it was claimed to be to help poor people. Immigrants, people whose parents are from distant lands, people of color, changing master, firing those professors, all that was for this. Except, of course, it did so little to actually help any of those people that it couldn't possibly have been the motivation. First of all, there are almost none of those people at Yale to start with, and none of what happened is actually to the benefit of any of these poor people or people of color. The only people who really benefited are a few activists willing to invest time and energy into that game. This leads to her next point, that this is an ideological revolution that's coming over Yale and the elite sectors of our society in general. She says that this is a small example of that. It's a small clique of agitators seizing more and more power, purging their enemies by virtue of their superior internal solidarity and a bold and demanding ideology with some lukewarm popular moral support and no real organized opposition. So that's just like any other, revolution. Right after a revolution, a small circle of insiders have a bold ideology, some ambient support, and no real opposition, so they start purging.
Yeah, and so what's the result of this on Yale, or I guess any of the other big institutions where this is happening? Well, the result is an institution increasingly unable to carry out its own mission, as tuition rises to pay for more administrators, and ideological drama makes it harder and harder to actually teach. Now we're back at the original question. What was the point of Yale? What was the point of going to Yale? What is the point of elite institutions? Yale's currently having this existential crisis. Students are taught to break the system, but Yale doesn't even want to teach them what the original system was, or what it was for, or how to productively replace it. The university itself is so lacking in vision, it doesn't even know what the ideal student looks like, or what it wants to teach them.
And she says, so what is the point of the new ideology? It's not ideological rigor, obviously, so it seems to be an elaborate containment system for the discontent generated by the failure of the current system, and an absolution from guilt for the elites, and a new form of class signaling. Shouting from the rooftops they aren't doing enough is much easier than following any traditional system of elite social norms and duties, let alone carefully re-engineering that system to re-establish order in a time of growing crisis. So, yeah, coming back to society is in crisis, elites are shirking their duties to do something about this because it's scary, and having responsibilities is less convenient than not having responsibilities. And so joining this ideology is one way to absolve that guilt.
Yeah, I like this description of it. When you live with this mindset, what you end up with is not an establishment where a woke upper class rallies and advocates for the rights of minorities, the poor, and underprivileged groups. What you have is a blind and self-righteous upper class that becomes structurally unable to take coordinated responsibility. You get stuck in an ideological mode of coordination, where no one can speak the truth to correct collective mistakes, and overreaches without losing position. Yes. So this obviously is not ideal.
No. Again, saying Yale students, if they weren't powerful when they came in, and most were, they gained power by getting a Yale degree. What do you do with this power? You don't want to abuse it. You're not evil. You want to do something different. You want to be absolved of your power. You are ashamed of your power. Why should you have it and not somebody else? Maybe someone more deserving. You never signed up for this. You'd rather be somebody normal. but not normal normal. More like normal with options and vacations and money. So you want to be something even better than normal. You want to be the underdog, which is kind of the whole ideology right now, right? That, like you were saying, the the oppression points or whatever, what it was.
Yeah, something like that. I keep being reminded of something my Philly Lesser On group had as one of our readings, talked about fashion in the same kind of sense, how fashion trends change with striping or stratification in class. And so you imagine wealthy people own expensive brands, and then less wealthy people buy the same things because they want to look like those wealthy people. And then the poorer classes buy cheaper knockoffs of those things, and it trickles down. And it's not cool anymore if, like, some poor kid's wearing the same sneakers that you have. So what the wealthy did is they invented normcore, which is a fashion style that is composed of blue jeans, sneakers, and a gray hoodie over, like, a plain t-shirt, or otherwise just dressing down. If you're super elite, the thing is, you don't have to dress like it, actually.
Yeah.
People, if you're wealthy enough, people know who you are. Everyone knows who Mark Zuckerberg is, regardless of what he's wearing. And people can't copy that. And yeah, it's just weird, interesting signaling stuff.
Yeah. She ends with saying that this isn't just Yale, and this isn't just colleges. This is reflective of the entire American elite society. And I think I agree. It seems to be more and more in our political sphere as well, that people are very interested in woke signaling and less interested in coming to...
Well, they're less interested in actually doing anything about the causes that they claim to care about.
Yeah.
They want to...
They
want
the
the
power
points
responsibly.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, the article is just here pointing out a problem. It doesn't offer any possible solutions, which is always kind of a bummer, but...
Well, it yells at Yale, though. It sounds like what she's trying to say is Yale needs to grow some balls.
Yeah.
And actually, like, stand up for... Actually, like, the reason we use this word master, and maybe that's not the best example, but, like, she's kind of saying, like, you know, you used to stand for something. Yale used to be, like, this place that would teach you as someone who's elite and wealthy and powerful how to behave well and how to use those powers correctly and responsibly. And why aren't you doing that anymore? Why are you just caving into all of these... like, there were more. There was, like, I think the dean... Somebody found all of the previous dean's Yelp reviews. It was the student newspaper, yeah. They found all the worst reviews that she had ever made in Yelp, collated them into a PDF, and then published it in the student newspaper, and it was just a hit job.
And basically she seems to be yelling, start being more like Bruce Wayne's parents, and stop being lame. Stop abdicating your responsibility, start realizing you have a lot of power, and you have to use it for good.
Or donate all your wealth to somebody who's doing good.
Right.
Stick it all into the top charities, you know, like, there's other things you can do to be good. Donate 10% of your income to Against Malaria Foundation or whatever.
Yeah. So, reaction time. How do you feel about this whole thing? Because I, for one, have always, until recently, hated the elite. And if I saw something like this, I would be like, good. I hope they all fucking drown in their own filth and we can wash them away. And I feel that less so nowadays, and specifically be like, it feels really weird to say anything. For me personally, it feels really weird to say anything in support of the elite and powerful. So I just feel really weird reading this and being like, yes, you should use your power and be good, as opposed to just being wiped out. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm very conflicted.
I don't know. Communism's not really a viable strategy.
Right.
Or, like, we haven't found a way to make it a viable strategy. And so human society is always going to structurally turn into a system where there's elites and where there's middle class, maybe, and then lower classes. We're a hierarchical species, and that's going to be hard to break out of. And I don't hate rich people, because you can't paint with a broad brush like that. My cousins are ultra rich, and I kind of watch their lives be ruined. Like, was jealous of them because of all the stuff they owned and their nice clothes and their expensive schools they went to. And then I actually like spent some time living with them, and I was like, oh, I wouldn't want to live like this. It was very awkward in the sense that they were really being taught how to present themselves at all times. They weren't allowed to be kids. Right. They were like my cousin was wearing little suits with like short pants and speaking with a fake British accent. And had to pretend to be interested in economics, and or I don't know if he had to pretend, but he was just this like child businessman.
That's the kind of thing I would want our elites to be doing to their kids. Be like, yes, he's gonna have to take care of the economy when he grows up.
I guess. I mean, there's probably better ways that you could. Like, but it's teaching them signaling. It's not teaching them how to, like, what are the most effective charities, and here's moral theory.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, where I take issue. And, I agree with the article in that, maybe elite schools should be taking on some of that responsibility. That used to be what they were for. What are they even for now? Yep. Although, also, I kind of wish colleges would go away. And then maybe that's how you get rid of it. I don't know. Like, that's kind of an interesting idea. If college does go away and education starts to take the form of more of boot camps or online learning, I wonder how that's going to affect this and what other institutions are going to pop up as replacements. Does something need to replace it?
Well, I think that my idea of college going is the place where you go to get the training for a good job is kind of like what boot camps and other training institutions should be, and they should wipe away most colleges. But then there's these universities which, like you said, are basically training the elite how to use their power in a way that's to society's benefit, and I think those should stay around because that is an important thing, and they should work like they did 100 years ago, back before all this crap started happening.
I don't think they should work the way they did 100 years ago, because there's
even
probably
30
some
years
crappy
ago?
outdated shit.
Well, okay, yeah. But before they gave up all responsibility on training the elite and powerful into how to use their powers for good. Because I think that's an actual important job still, and someone needs to do it.
Yeah, I wish something like that existed in general. Like, I wish there was enough emphasis on things like teaching social skills to kids, or like how to deal with trauma. Instead of, schools are still structured in this, like, training you to be an office worker or factory worker kind of way. And my college education was useless. Yeah. It was not the thing you're describing, where you go to learn how to get a good job or how to do a good job. I didn't learn any job skills. Yeah. I learned lots of theory. I learned lots of abstraction. That was cool. I like learning things, but I didn't graduate college feeling ready to start. And, like, I didn't know how to do anything. It took me a long time to learn how to do things like repair my car or pay my taxes and I know there's a chorus of people that'll say, like, school needs to bring back home ec and they need to teach kids real skills. But like, yeah, I think to some extent, there's a lot of kids that never learn how to do anything, and then suddenly they're in their 20s and they're living on their own for the first time and they don't know how to fry an egg. That is a bit sad. And they also don't know what to do about their depression, which is sad, or like their abusive boyfriend or girlfriend, or, it's just...
I think a lot of colleges, like the middle-class colleges, style themselves after the elite universities like Yale, because they're like, oh, we're offering the same sort of service, but they're not at all, because their user base is so drastically different that modeling themselves on those universities was a huge mistake and doesn't help anyone.
It didn't strike me that the school I went to was modeling itself after Yale or anything. Like, I didn't get any.
They tried to teach you culture and theory and crap, right?
No, they didn't really.
They
didn't? I picked what classes I was taking, and I started as an environmental science major, and then switched to a visual arts major, and then I learned Flash and other random stuff. But no, there wasn't any like cultural studies really, or like there wasn't any kind of instructive cultural studies. Like, this is what is good, this is how you should behave. It's more like completely abstracted, like, here is how some cultures in the past have behaved.
The thing I remember most from my year in college was basically the culture of college, and it was a beautiful, wonderful thing, and I really liked it. And it was just this sequestered place away from the rest of society where everyone just liked to live the life of the mind, and it was amazing. But
that is not what my experience was like, and that sounds cool.
yeah, but I mean that also, and in that environment, they try to teach you job skills, which it's not a good match. and I think boot camps are much better. They're, here's your job skills. We're not bothering with all these like dormitories and quads and greens and after class activities. This is just, here, learn your thing.
Yeah, my boot camp was like, okay, here's an intensive walk through the material that you need to know. And for me, it was clinical research. So it's like, here's medical terminology. Here's FDA regulations. Here's the Belmont report. Here's how to draw blood and stuff. And then
right.
And then they brought in career coaches who were like, here's how to dress. Here's how to write a resume. Here's where to go to put your resumes. Here's how to network. I never learned any of that in school. That would have been useful if they were teaching me actual job skills. Like, how do you get a job? I was never taught how to get a job.
Yeah.
Maybe my school was especially bad, but...
Where did you go?
Stockton University in New Jersey.
There wasn't like a campus feel to it at all?
I mean, I commuted, so maybe I missed out on that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
But I don't know. I never got a sense that there was any kind of...
Like even have you seen the show Community?
Yeah. You showed me some.
Oh, that's right, yes. Even that show, it's a community college, but it still kind of has the campus feel while they're on campus, This is a separate area.
Yeah, I didn't experience any of that.
Okay.
I'm trying to project the future if universities do start going away and how things might change. Maybe it would be a good thing. I could see kind of it democratizing education in a way and everybody, but it also could do the opposite where I think that our culture currently has this problem where nobody is taught what to do, what your place in society is. I think that this is kind of this article is kind of a narrower scope of this overarching. People kind of are like, all right, here you go to school, you learn math, you learn history, you learn whatever, and then it's like, all right, go off into the world, and you're like, I don't know how to be a good person. Yeah. I don't know what my job or my role in society is supposed to be. I don't know how to be or feel useful. And that's very isolating and kind of crippling for a lot of people. Yeah. There's other societies that have these kind of coming of age rituals where and structures to them where you grow up knowing, okay, here's what your job is going to be. Here's what your role in this community is. Mm-hmm. Here's how you achieve here's how you get to your rite of passage. Here's how you earn it.
We don't really have, I think that's a big part of the problem is we don't really have community here in the U.S. Everyone breaks up and moves to wherever the jobs is so much that there's no shared, this is where we as a people have lived for 300 years and we help each other out. And I know the guy across the street.
Yeah. I grew up in a suburb where there was no sense of community. There was no gathering place. Yeah. I went to church, but we didn't really hang out with anybody else from the church. So I didn't have any church friends. Yeah. I kind of hung out with some of the kids on my block, but it didn't feel like the adults were connected in any way, or that once we got older we were connected with anybody in any way. It was pretty I don't know, everybody kind of lived in their house with their family and that was their whole network.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's like that in Europe.
I think my impression is, I guess it depends on the country, but Europe seems like they have a little bit more kind of history of there being cultures that are more closely tied together.
Yeah. I mean, they're also a capitalist system, so I imagine it's weaker than it used to be, but they do seem to be, more closely tied together than us in the U.S.
Obviously, there's some bad things about cultures like the one I was describing, too, where if you are assigned a role in society, that limits your freedom.
Right.
And some of these rites of passage were pretty horrific. I think there's this one in South America where you have to put your arm into a glove full of bullet ants.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, a bullet ant's bite feels like being shot.
Yeah.
So the kid just has to deal with being basically shot in the arm multiple times, and then they're like, congratulations, you're now a man. Mm-hmm. That's child torture, but also gives this kid this feeling of all the adults in my village have done this thing, and if I want to be an adult, I have to do this thing. So it's a commitment device. And it's now, I'm an adult and I accept my role in society and that I'm going to do the good things and, So there's got to be some ways that we could kind of replace that in a better way than the way that our schools are trying to do it or that our communities are totally lacking it. Maybe there's a little bit of that in Boy and Girl Scouts. I don't know.
And shared suffering and shared hardship really brings people together, too.
Yeah.
So if you know everyone else has gone through the same painful experience, I mean, and then afterwards when someone else does it, you're like, I was there too, you know? I know what you're feeling.
Yeah. I like the solstice that I went to that was about smallpox.
Yeah.
Or it was about us overcoming smallpox, because I did feel kind of the thing they intended was we were talking about how terrible it is and lighting out, like blowing out all the candles, and then talking about the defeat of smallpox and how humanity came together and we used the power of science and not no one has to die anymore from this stupid disease, and lit all the candles again and sang happy songs. And it's like, you can generate that kind of feeling without having to put your arm in a glove full of bullet ants. you can get some pretty strong emotions from just like kind of doing little rituals, which have their own set of problems.
The rituals?
Yeah, I mean, you were the one that was you felt squicked out by the idea of doing rituals.
Yeah, in general,
because
yes.
they can brainwash you.
Yeah.
I mean, like anything that's trying to intentionally manipulate your emotions.
I would like to like rituals. Yeah.
That's the first step.
Well.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted this topic, though.
Okay. On to the Less Wrong posts, then?
Okay.
Cool. And if anyone has any other comments about this topic, we have both the Bayesian Conspiracy subreddit and a Discord, which are always linked in the show notes at thebayesianconspiracy.com.
Let us know what you think the future without colleges might look like.
Or the future with an elite class shirking their responsibilities. Although there does seem to be some pullback from that now. Like, I think it was at its nadir in, somewhere in the 2016, 2017 range. Things feel like they're pulling back a little bit from there.
What's that?
The whole everything succumbing to wokeness, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm just seeing it less.
Yeah, I know I'm definitely seeing it less because I'm just not on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, so, Less Wrong posts. The first one we have is, religions claim to be non-disprovable, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good one. So it starts with this biblical story. The people of Israel are waving between Jehovah and Baal. So Elijah announces he'll conduct an experiment to settle it. Quite a novel concept in those days. The priests of Baal will place their bull on an altar, and Elijah will place Jehovah's bull on an altar, but neither will be allowed to start the fire. Whichever god is real will call down fire on his sacrifice. The priests of Baal serve as the control group for Elijah. The same wooden fuel, the same bull, and the same priests making invocations, but to a false god. Then Elijah pours water on his altar, ruining the experimental symmetry, but this was way back in the early days, to signify deliberate acceptance of the burden of proof, like needing a 0.05 significance level. The fire comes down on Elijah's altar, which is the experimental observation. The watching people of Israel shout, "The Lord is God!" Peer review. Love it.
I love this whole explanation of history's first recorded experiment, which it isn't technically, but it was beautiful. It was all the parts of an experiment are there laid out, and it was just really fun to read.
Yeah, especially this. And then the people haul the 450 priests of Baal down to the river Kishon and slit their throats. This is stern but necessary. You must firmly discard the falsified hypothesis, and do so swiftly, before it can generate excuses to protect itself. If the priests of Baal are allowed to survive, they will start babbling about how religion is a separate magisterium which can neither be proven nor disproven.
Firm but necessary. Stern but necessary. Every now and then, just a little bit of mass murder to get the experiments going. It was wonderful, and it is in the making of this broader point that, as he says, back in the old days, people actually believed their religions instead of believing in them. And saying something like the local religion could not be proven would have gotten you burned at the stake. The vast majority of religions in human history tell stories of events that would constitute completely unmistakable evidence if they'd actually happened. I'm not sure exactly why this post appears here in the sequence of posts. It seems a bit disconnected from the rest of them, but I love it so much, I don't really care. But yeah, it's one of those. This was still the early-ish days of the new atheism, and there were still fights going on as to whether the new atheists should just shut up about things, and religion is its own separate magisteria, that science can't say anything about it, and so forth. So this was pushing back on that. Points out that early Egyptologists were genuinely shocked to find no trace whatsoever of Hebrew tribes having ever been in Egypt. They weren't expecting to find a record of the 10 plagues, but they expected to find something. And they found out that during the supposed time of the Exodus, Egypt ruled much of Canaan. That is a huge historical error, but if there are no libraries, no one can call you on it. The Roman Empire did have libraries, and thus the New Testament doesn't claim big, showy, large-scale geopolitical miracles like the Old Testament did. Do we want to say anything about the whole experiments in religion thing?
Why did you have something in mind?
What I have in mind is that I agree completely with all of this. That people always say crap like, science you can't test religion with science or whatever, but then as soon as, this is like the old Mott and Bailey thing, then as soon as you're out of an actual formal debate, they're going back to their church and all their religious friends and family and being like, yep, this God miracle gave me a winning scratch ticket or cured my child's gout or whatever it was, Like they always act as if God really is there and is present in the world and is doing things, which, if it was the case, would be testable because anything that has an effect on the real world can be seen in the real world, right?
Yeah.
You can measure it.
Yeah, I was earlier telling Iniash and Steven this story about watching one of my cancer patients receiving CAR T cells, and they had a priest in the room who came over and blessed the cells.
Yeah.
And then he blessed our hands.
I would have kindly...
It's like, I bless these cells.
Yeah. I would have kindly said I'd rather not have my hands blessed.
And I bless the hands of the healers.
Oh my god.
It's like, now let us all bow our heads in prayer. And I had no idea any of this was going to happen.
Yeah.
But apparently the patient was religious and had requested this happen, so we all had to kind of just go along with it. But it was awkward.
Dude.
We've got these like bioengineered high-tech cells that are being injected, and
it's
he's
important.
waving his hands around them like
yeah,
like
doing his magic on them.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was told that if you pray and you are good and you go to confession, because I was Catholic, God will give you whatever you want. Like, God will answer your prayers. So I'm like, okay. I got on top of my desk and I was like, I wish to fly. And then I fell. And I got back on the desk and I was like, oh, I really wish to fly. I super duper believe, and I've been good and said my confession, and I don't think I've ever done anything bad because I'm a little kid anyway, so just let me fly just for 2 seconds. Fell again. Got back up and then was like, all right, God, if you let me fly, I will do extra chores and I will be so good. I'm going to donate money to charity, and I'm going to... That fell again. All right, God, I'm going to stop believing in you if you don't make me fly.
Ooh, threatening God.
Yeah, and then I fell again, and then my young self didn't come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist, but that he exists, but he's an asshole.
Ah.
It took me a little while longer to wrap my head around the atheism thing, because I'd just never heard of it. I didn't know that was an option.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely kind of was like, God, after that. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. All right, sure.
Jerk. That's cool.
Yeah, there's also the whole women can't do stuff part of, or like, I don't know, weird outdated shit.
Was that still in part of Catholicism?
Oh yeah, like, I mean, you read the Bible. And then you're supposed to kind of double think the bad shit that you've read out of the Bible. But like, oh, but that was back in the day. And like, now we do things this way, but that's fine. And I'm just like, yeah, but what about, the slaves were okay, but we're just going to not talk about that. Okay. All right.
We're just going to pretend God's not a jerk. Just like when he didn't let you fly.
God's a jerk.
Yeah. This goes into the next point that I was actually that I pulled out. The post says, not only did religion used to make claims about factual and scientific matters, religion used to make claims about everything. Religion laid down a code of law, the sexual morals, the form of government, answered scientific questions from biological taxonomy to the formation of stars. The modern concept of religion as purely ethical derives from every other areas having been taken over by better institutions. Ethics is what's left. Or rather, people think ethics is what's left. Ethics has not been immune to human progress. Why do people think that ethics is still fair game? Which, yeah, what the fuck?
I think because you can't disprove ethics. ethics is
Yep.
still, like, you can still debate about it, and you can still have two different ideas. So the fact that you can't do an experiment and be like, well, animals evolved, or no, stars are created by big burning clouds of gas. You can argue with somebody all you want about whether ethics are evolved or whether God sent them down, and you can't really do anything to prove it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you kind of can, but like, it's much fuzzier.
But like when the Bible says grasshoppers have 4 legs, people are like, well, the Bible isn't supposed to be a scientific document, right? So no big deal. But then the Bible says you can't, that it's okay to keep slaves. No one says, well, the Bible isn't supposed to be an ethical document. They're still like, it's an ethical document. We just ignore that part.
Yeah, no, that you were used to be allowed to keep slaves.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
not anymore.
Right? So, yeah, just the fact that people still say that it's about ethics is weird when they don't say that it's about laws of governance or about scientific claims. Because it's just as wrong on the questions of ethics as it is on all these other things.
It's, yeah, super wrong.
Yeah.
Where were we? If you say the earth is flat, people will look at you like you're crazy. But if you say the Bible is your source of ethics, women will not slap you. Most people's concept of rationality is determined by what they think they can get away with. They think they can get away with endorsing Bible ethics, so it only requires a manageable effort or self-deception for them to overlook the Bible's moral problem.
Yeah.
And the idea that religion is a separate magisterium that cannot be proven or disproven is a big lie. A lie which is repeated over and over again, so people will say it without thinking. Yet which is, on critical examination, simply false. It's a wild distortion of how religion happened historically, of how all scriptures present their beliefs, of what children are told to persuade them, and of what the majority of religious people on earth still believe.
And there we go. It's giant Mont and Bailey lie, and we should call people on that crap when they try it.
Yeah. Actually, like, if I really think about it, the thing that finally made me an atheist was reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And it was in college. I actually took a Bible as literature class because I had a lit minor. And we read it with accompanying, I think they were like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there was a feminist interpretation of the Bible and a couple of other different...
A feminist interpretation of the Bible?
Yeah, the instructor really wanted us to analyze it through various lenses. And,
That takes some mental gymnastics.
Oh, no, it was, like, not pro-Bible.
Oh, okay.
It was very much like, this is a horrifying book that tells terrible stories about women suffering and
Gotcha.
being disenfranchised, and
Okay, I thought it was somehow a feminist pro-Bible thing.
I'm sure that probably exists.
I'm
I'm sure lots
sure
of
it
those
is.
exist.
Yeah.
But, yep, that did it.
Mm-hmm.
I wish more people would just read the damn thing. There's parts of it that are, like, a lot of the Old Testament is just animal sacrifice.
Yes.
So much animal sacrifice. It goes into endless detail about what color the cow has to be and how old it is and whether it's got spots and
That
how
shit
you've
was
got to
important,
array
man.
its offal on the altar and what time of year you're allowed to do this, and
Yeah.
Ethics.
I liked the post, and it made a good point, and it stuck with me, especially the first ever scientific experiment part. That really made it memorable.
Yeah, I wish that it had actually gone into why it is disprovable.
Why? Which is disprovable?
Religion.
Okay. Well, I mean, anytime religion makes a claim and that claim is contradicted by reality, it's partially disproven, right?
Yeah.
And you get enough of those claims, and you're like, this is just a giant load of horseshit, isn't it?
I think that somebody who was not already convinced of the atheist viewpoint wouldn't read this and come out of it, like, feeling like that this was a good argument.
Right, yeah.
This is kind of a preaching to the choir. Like, maybe that was its purpose, and it's more about,
It was definitely preaching to the choir in the effect of, because there were a lot of people who are basically, or there still are, I guess, a lot of people who are basically non-religious in their day-to-day life, but will still go to church a couple times a year and say that they are, like, Christian or whatever, and when this separate magisterial stuff comes up, they're like, oh yeah, Bible's not a scientific document. I still believe that there's some kind of big God thing out there, and the Jesus helped us out or whatever. I just don't bother with all the little minutia because the Bible writers probably got that wrong, And I think this is a very good counter to that. If someone was exposed to this, being like, no, that's just you lying to yourself, and it is a very big lie. Because I meet a lot of people like that. I'm friends with a lot of people like that.
yeah, I just wish this article would be something that I could point to them I remember having a coworker who was religious and actually asked, like, well, if you can prove to me that evolution happened, then I don't know. I've never encountered anything that I thought was good proof, so I spent a really long time sending him documents showing like DNA and fossils and like
it's literally
geology and there's so much evidence. I was just like spamming this guy, and then like I think he kind of like pretended to read a little bit of it and then closed it and then stopped reading any of it and was just like, I'll read that another time. Like, okay. Yeah, you want to be proven wrong, all right.
Okay.
I wish, that there was like a place that I could have just sent him one link that had like the knockdown argument for here's why the Bible is a lie. Maybe that exists now, if anyone knows where that is.
No, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Religion is such a deeply entrenched in your emotions and your mind kind of thing that it's in my opinion, literally impossible to send someone one link that would change their mind. It's a process that takes lots of time and some social support.
But I just want there to be one website that has all the evidence for the fact that life evolved.
There's many websites like that.
There's many, but that's intimidating. But if there were one link that I could send that just had all the information and you could go into history and mathematics and just like...
No, wouldn't matter. Worst case scenario, they would accept that evolution is true, but it was guided by God.
But that would still be a step forward, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
The importance of saying oops.
Which religious people don't do until eventually one day. It starts out with a comment on Enron. Enron, for people who weren't around at the time, was a big energy firm based out of Texas, I believe, who were doing gangbusters, making lots of money, great company. And then all of a sudden, it turns out the entire thing is a fraud. They've lost $5 billion, and the whole thing collapses overnight. Lots of people are out a lot of money, and it was a huge financial scandal. And of course, no one went to jail because no one ever goes to jail for stealing $5 billion. You only go to jail for stealing $10-20. But Eliezer read a book about it, and he said that a unsurprising feature of Enron's slow rot and abrupt collapse was that the executive players never admitted to having made a large mistake. When catastrophe number 247 grew to such an extent that it required an actual policy change, they would say, "Too bad that didn't work out. It was such a good idea. How are we going to hide the problem on our balance sheet?" As opposed to, "It now seems obvious in retrospect that it was a big mistake from the beginning."
If we only admit to small local errors, we will only make small local changes. The motivation for big change comes from acknowledging a big mistake.
This is a post that is pro-epiphany, basically. It's saying, you know what? Every now and then, take major stock of your life. And this, I get the feeling this is how most people actually do abandon religion. So maybe it was related to the previous post. But it takes a lot of little small errors and mistakes and oopses over a long period of time until eventually you're like, holy shit, this whole thing was wrong, right? Or at least that was the case for me.
I think that is probably the case for most people. I expect that there's a few people who converted on the spot, or deconverted as the case may be, but probably more often there's more and more questioning over time.
Yeah. But at some point, you gotta acknowledge you made a big mistake. And Eliezer says, a traditional rationalist upbringing tries to produce arguers who will concede to contrary evidence eventually. There should be some mountain of evidence sufficient to move you. This is not trivial. It distinguishes science from religion. But there is less focus on speed, on giving up the fight as quickly as possible, integrating evidence efficiently so that it only takes a minimum of contrary evidence to destroy your cherished belief. There is a powerful advantage to admitting when you have made a large mistake. It's painful. It can also change your whole life. And I don't know entirely how I feel about this because, I mean, sure, if you're wrong about something, especially something important, you want to stop being wrong as soon as possible, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're wrong about whether slavery is good, you want to change your slavery position as soon as you can.
I want to change whether, if you're wrong about whether global warming is a thing and that we need to do something about it, I want to very quickly change to, hey, let's do some mitigation.
Yeah.
let's very quickly try to do what we can to fix this.
I hear in business, it's always best to, if you're going to fail in something, fail fast. That way you don't spend a lot of time and a lot of money on something that's going to fail.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of more related to agile sort of structures where you're coming up with lots of different ideas and trying to move quickly and really quickly, like, test them all, figure out which ones don't work, throw them out, and keep moving towards the better ones, the ones that work, the ones that test the best.
And so I agree that's a big advantage and something one would want, but I mean, the problem is if you knew the thing was wrong, you would already not be doing it, right?
Well, when you find out it's wrong is what he's saying. You have to be willing to be like, oops, I was wrong, I fucked up big time, and I'm gonna acknowledge that and move on. And I agree. I remember somewhere in the rational sphere I read people talking about wanting to norm if people admit that they have made a mistake, that everybody cheers and high fives them. And I love that. And actually I've started like a little habit of doing that with my friends.
Cool.
Where like, oh, I realize I messed up, or like leaving my last job, I got cheered and high-fived by my friends. I was like, yeah, that was a mistake. And now I'm unemployed and I gotta find another job. And it's like, it felt great for them to be like, yeah, that job sucked. Get out of there. You did it. You now you can find a better job. And it's like, yeah, well, kick this idea in the trash. Now I can find a better idea. It's something that you should feel proud of.
Yeah.
And that I wish society, like, didn't punish us so hard for, like, that the societal norm wasn't that it's embarrassing and you lose face if you go and publicly say, I have made a mistake. That should be something that we're like, you know, if a politician comes and says, oh, I realize I've made a mistake about this policy and that science shows that actually this is better. That should be something that people are like, yeah, like, I want to vote for that politician.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah. It's like, we have this, like, weird idea that people need to always be right and always look confident.
But I also think giving up on things too quickly can be a problem too. Like, that would make you a easy target for, like, get-rich schemes, what do they call those? Multi-level marketing schemes, or
well, I think the point is
religious claims and cults and things like that.
Once you have evidence that shows that you were wrong, then unless like somebody faked some evidence or something.
No, I mean, people often do fake evidence. And,
yeah, I guess. I mean,
and in general, like,
you want to investigate and really find out whether you were wrong, and I think you should be really rigorous about that. But
yeah, some things are not that clear cut, and you could be confused about something. And
well, I think that's a case where you wouldn't throw it out if you're not sure. You have to keep investigating. Eventually, you'll find enough evidence one way or the other.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's
most things.
That is what Eliezer's sort of arguing against. He did say that everyone agrees at least everyone in the rationalist sphere agrees that there's some mountain of evidence that can change your mind on some things, but Eliezer is saying that that level should maybe be a little bit lower so people don't hang on to ideas for too long, which on the one hand is true, but on the other hand is also a bit of a defense mechanism.
I think it's also fine to be able to admit that I used to have absolute faith and confidence in this hypothesis, but now I'm reading this stuff that seems to say the opposite thing, and I'm not quite sure which one it is yet, so I'm kind of holding off on saying which one I'm going to support until I have collected more evidence, and that should also be fine. I think that's
the biggest advantage of this whole Bayesian rationality movement, is the idea to have degrees of confidence in beliefs rather than being just like, I'm a capitalist or I'm a communist, you know? It's more like, give 80% credence to the capitalism thing, and I'm not being on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So much. Because, there was a time when it was easy to convince people that socialism was the best thing to do because
it hadn't been tested.
It hadn't been tested on paper. It looked great, everything would be better if this worked out. So people were like, yeah, I find this convincing, and that turned out to be bad. So some people were too easily swayed in that regard.
This article ends with, don't indulge in drama and become proud of admitting errors. It's surely superior to get it right the first time. But if you do make an error, better by far to see it all at once, which is kind of the thing that I disagree with. I think that we should, as a society, norm it being fine to admit when you've made an error. Especially the whole fail fast thing, too. Like, I like that that's becoming something that's more widely known that businesses are using, that people developing software are using. Try lots of stuff. If it doesn't work, move on to the next thing.
Well, I do think he's right that, I mean, it is better to be right the first time, but...
Yeah, but...
Yeah, you're right. Admitting error should be a celebrated thing. He says, I have watched others making their own series of minimal concessions, grudgingly conceding each millimeter of ground, never confessing a global mistake where a local one will do. They do their best to minimize their embarrassment by saying, I was right in principle, or it could have worked, or I still want to embrace the true essence of whatever I'm attached to. Defending their pride in this passing moment, they ensure they will again make the same mistake and again need to defend their pride. So, yeah, in general, I think he makes a good point about failing fast when you can.
You're failing publicly and owning up to it.
Yeah.
Next time we're going to read Focus Your Uncertainty and the Proper Use of Doubt.
Yes. And there are links to those, again, at thebayesianconspiracy.com. And going on to listener feedback, yes?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
We've got one from Zikaran, which was on Are the Bayesian Conspiracy? On deathists. Lee, yeah, I know, but I'm saddened by how Caitlin Doughty was represented in a previous discussion. It seems unfair to paint her as an enemy of immortality-seeking transhumans. She's a mortician with two main goals: prevent grieving people from getting scammed by expensive mortuaries, and to help grieving people have a healthier view of death to get them through the grieving process quicker. She focuses on natural burials that are better for the environment, better for your wallet, and better for your relationship to your dead relatives.
Okay.
And I think that's a fair point. People are complicated, and I don't like to take one bad thing that someone has said or done and then throw them under the bus whole hog. I actually believe I have watched some of her videos, and I think they're pretty good, but I do still not like the pro-deathism.
Yeah. I am happy to say that I would be happy to say that she's probably a good person and probably doing a lot of good work overall.
Yeah.
And at the same time say that her statement that life is meaningless without death, or whatever it was that we were harping on that one time, is a morally abhorrent statement, and is just wrong, and people shouldn't say that and should feel bad for saying it.
Yeah, I hear a lot. I hear this phrase a lot, that death gives life meaning,
yeah.
And I'm like, no, like
living gives life meaning.
I could see the idea that something is impermanent gives it more value. This is true, but there's, even if you live forever, there's still parts of you that are impermanent. You grow up, you change, you get different jobs, you get different lovers, and you're in different relationships. You have kids, your kids grow up. I mean, lots of things are impermanent, but like, change is great. When you're dead, you're not changing anymore. Yeah. You're done.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea that death gives life meaning, is like kind of put as this overarching thing that gives life meaning. I think what gives life meaning are the experiences you have while you're alive, the things that you care about, the people you care about, like what you see, what you accomplish, your hopes and dreams. I mean, come on. Yeah. We can do better. But yeah, like the other things that Zeke mentions about helping people avoid getting scammed, and especially the thing about the like natural burials. I really hate the whole process. Like,
embalm you forever in the ground.
That's another thing that like rationalists should support, though. Like, yeah, cremation, pumping like a whole bunch of
or cryogenically freezing your brain. That I am a big proponent of that one.
Yeah, that's
because then maybe you can be brought back.
I don't know how environmentally friendly that is, but I think it probably still beats being embalmed and stuck in a box that's never going to biodegrade. I
mean, I think you're allowed to be a little environmentally unfriendly in the interest of not killing yourself.
Yeah.
That's a thing most people, I believe, would get behind, aside from extinctionists. So yeah, I'm okay saying Caitlin Doughty, probably a great person doing good work, who said one or maybe several morally abhorrent things, which doesn't make her a terrible person or invalidate her work, but those things are still bad.
I kind of want to email her.
Yeah?
I wonder if I could kind of...
I mean, you probably could find her email address.
Yeah, probably.
Why? What would you say?
Oh, just, hey, I love your show, but this one thing you said, Like, here's my take on this. I wonder if she'd respond, or if she gets so much email that...
I mean, probably, but it's worth a shot. Every now and then people have a chance to get to an email, and you might be the lucky one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an interesting, assuming that, she's not just going to throw out anything that goes against her core beliefs or whatever.
Yeah.
That there's probably, like, less interesting emails that she gets. Okay, let's go on to...
Why We Cur, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Eneash.
Okay, this one was in response to, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, where we mentioned Scott from Slate Star Codex, Scott's post about how society has basically taken away a lot of people's ability to support themselves. They can no longer go out and forage and do those sorts of things that people used to be able to do because society has paved over those parts of the world and replaced it with this hierarchical structure where the only way to live is to work in a factory or be, useful
in some way,
in some
money.
other way. Yeah, exactly. And so that society does owe people things because it did that. And Why We Cur would like to point out, saying, if I were to guess, I'd say hunter-gatherer societies had basically the exact same problem, but at a smaller scale. I very much doubt that a human could venture out of his tribe alone into an area with good resources without being forced out by another group claiming that area. I think as a human, you're always dependent on some sort of society, since no human can live alone and compete against other humans who cooperate. And I think, first of all, that's a good point. If anywhere where there is other humans also vying for the same resources, you're going to have an issue and you're going to need to be part of a society. And I would like to once again bring up the movie Noah, which I thought was a fantastic representation of that. Noah and his family were super rich because they had this really fertile area of ground that they kept all to themselves. And then these people that were literally starving to death were like, well, fuck you, we need this or we're going to die. And then he loses everything because they come in here and they take all his land and now he's not rich anymore. Which I'm not sure that's the story the movie was trying to tell, but it was really interesting and I enjoyed that aspect of it. But yes, first of all, yeah, any group of humans could push you out, so you do need society anyway. And even if there were no other humans around, if your tribe was on the frontier here and the first one's there, I don't think you can live without a society anyway. You're gonna be eaten by an animal.
You won't be comfortable anyway.
Yeah.
Some people can live as a hermit. Most people do need human contact.
Yeah.
We're social animals.
And not just for the social stuff. I think even for survival, it'd be really important.
It would definitely help survival. But I think that this is kind of missing the point of Scott's statement there, where what he meant wasn't that you could go off on your own and forage. Like, what he meant was that the system that we have built is incredibly complex and we didn't evolve for it. There's a lot of people that can't hold down a good job and make good money who would have had no problem living in a hunter-gatherer society where they just have to collect acorns all day. Or, learn to do one thing, which is build arrows. Or, slightly better standards of life, in some cases slightly worse. I mean, if you look at a lot of anthropological studies, they show that hunter-gatherer societies, people tend to be a lot happier than we are. There's almost no depression or anxiety because they're living in the environment that we evolved in originally. Now, does that mean that people don't still die in childbirth all the time and of totally preventable diseases or a cut to your knee? Yeah, sure. So benefits, drawbacks, but... Yeah.
Also, society was rather unequal and horrible, so that part sucks too. But I mean, if you're used to it,
I don't think hunter-gatherer society was. It was pretty egalitarian. Or was, it continues to be. There's still hunter-gatherer tribes.
Yeah. Well, I guess in terms of general hierarchies, yeah, pretty egalitarian, but... Yeah,
it was once our agriculture developed that the inequalities started becoming really intense.
Although, yeah, when I read about the levels of, I guess nowadays we would call it domestic violence, of just like men abusing women and hurting them and using power over them in those societies, I'm like, holy fucking shit. This is horrible. And I do not want to ever go back to that sort of society.
This morning I was, I'm actually going to get a PlayStation VR because I want to play Beat Saber. And as I was looking at this ridiculous K-pop music video where this K-pop star is like playing this really intense Beat Saber in VR and just like running up walls, and I was just like, man, I really like the time that I was born into. And it's like, well, of course I don't know any kind of like future time periods that might be even cooler than this one, but if I look back at the past, nope, I'd probably be a mom of 9 kids or dead of malaria.
Alrighty, next one.
Just reply to this shit. Just to reply to this shit?
Yeah.
I think the framing of people as means versus people as ends helped clarify somewhat my own values.
And this is on the same topic.
Yeah. What's the point of the system? The whole system, society. Ask the system. How do we measure progress? What are we trying to maximize? GDP. It's not that the people don't care about anything else. It's that the suicide rates can keep rising, and if the GDP also rises, at least something %, head of state can stand in front of the people and boast of progress and prosperity. The utility function of society is currently misaligned with human values. If the system's ever been good to you, it's only because it has been thus far necessary to keep you a compliant, productive member of society. A lot of things are capitalized in this. I'm trying to convey that, but I don't know if I'm doing a good job. This is why automation can feel like such an apocalyptic threat in the current economic system. Because suddenly, you're not even that necessary to society's goals, and you know its goals don't explicitly include you. You're a means to an alien end. Society is an alien god.
And I think that really put into perspective exactly why automation does seem so threatening and UBI does seem so important, because in theory, the gay space communism is what we all want, right?
Yeah.
the nobody has to work because automation has completely replaced all labor and we're all happy. But in practice, what it looks like is automation replaces all need to work, and therefore we all die because the only thing the system needs us for is producing things, and when we aren't even useful for producing things anymore, there's no point in keeping us around.
I think there's 2 arguments there. If we've got intelligent AI, it's not going to care about our values anymore. Or other people say, if we automate away all the jobs, then people won't know what to do with themselves and they'll be sad.
I think the second one is dumb.
I super disagree with that.
Yeah.
I don't like the evil AI version. I'm not a fan of that one. Hopefully doesn't come to that.
I think what he's saying, though, is that society is already sort of or the system, in caps, is already a sort of weak level AI that is unfriendly. It is not aligned with our goals, because as humans we have a lot of goals like happiness and the prosperity of our loved ones and so forth, but all society currently cares about is GDP, and since that's what society is working towards, that is what all of our human labor is more or less being put towards, it is misaligned with our values, and this is becoming a problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, bringing up global warming again, because we're all GDP maximizers, we can't admit that we aren't allowed to go on air and say, actually, 90-something% of scientists all say that this is real and it's a problem, without having to have somebody else on there who's some crackpot that got paid off by not Enron, they're gone. But we're going to give them both like equal time to debate the global warming debate, and it's like, meanwhile, we all know that this is happening, and we really should have started doing something about it years ago. But considering that we're GDP maximizers, that's going to hurt the GDP. We can't do anything about it.
And yeah, since society is the aggregation of all human effort, it's much bigger than any one person, and thus having its values misaligned to our own values is kind of a problem.
Yeah, we've got like old people in nursing homes. I don't know, I could think of a lot of examples of ways that society is screwing people over.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason people put old people in nursing homes is, I guess, because it's more economically efficient.
Yeah.
To pay somebody else to take care of your elderly parent. I guess the same thing with daycares, too. I mean, it's more economically efficient to have both parents work full-time and have a nanny take care of your baby.
Yeah, you're very busy out there being productive and keeping that society GDP on target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm sad. Thanks, just to reply to this shit.
Yeah, jerk.
Send a
You're
nicer
just like God.
next time. No, I'm just kidding. That was a good comment.
Yeah, it was.
All right. How about we thank some patrons?
Let's do that. So this week we would like to thank our patron Dan Wall as our patron every other week.
Thanks, Dan. We appreciate you. Gratitude being sent your way.
Yes. You are helping redirect some of society's resources to things that are more aligned with our values,
Yeah.
as opposed to simply maximizing GDP. Because this show, as far as I know, does not produce any GDP. Although I guess it does provide entertainment value, which is a big part of GDP too. Yeah. You know what? The more money people give us, the greater a percentage of GDP we will be. So someday, if all the money comes to us, we will be society.
Huh.
What I'm saying is
that how that
everybody
works?
should give us all of their money.
I don't know.
You don't know about
I'm
that?
not sure if we become GDP.
Okay. We should still give some money to this cancer research place you're working for.
I would appreciate that, actually. We live in a terrible little office right now, and they're putting off the renovations to the new office because the college across the street wanted money for their renovation, and they... Anyway.
Oh, I didn't know that. I assumed since it was like leading tech edge stuff, you had fancy offices and shit.
I don't know. Research is crammed in like the 4th floor in a little closet.
Oh, damn, dude. Yeah, we totally got to get more money towards this cancer research thing then. Sounds pretty awesome. All right. Anyways, Dan Wall, thank you. And thank you all for listening. And
Thank you guys.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with more stuff.
Good
and
night.
with a Steven Zuber.
Oh yeah, Steven should be back from Cancun unless he decides to just stay there.
I mean, I wouldn't blame him.
I wouldn't blame him either, but he's got to come back.
Right, he's going to run out of money eventually.
Yeah, we need him.
He needs his portion of the GDP.
We need him to go on more tangents. I think we're like making reasonable time.
Yeah, I know. All right, goodbye.
Bye-bye.